Good morning, Tony Dattino, founder of the USA Memory Championship. And as we get in closer and closer to July, I'm thinking about the qualifying rounds of our 26th USA Memory Championship. And as I reflect on this, I go back and I think of our very first year, and the very first event we did at the Park Central Hotel in New York City. And Tony Buzan and Vonda North flew over from London to guide us through how do you run a memory championship, and the excitement that we had in finding a conference room at the Park Central Hotel that was affordable, New York City, 57th Street, right on the edge of Times Square, and it was just an amazing day, an event. We had 19 people actually that attended to compete for who had the best memory championship. And just as Tony and Vonda were getting us set up, and we had the games and the papers and everything organized, and people checked in for who was going to be participating. We had a press release, radio announcements, so we had PR that sent out, and it turns out we had more newspaper, media, radio coverage than we had mental athletes. It was like there was a line of people at the door, and we were just bombarded by people wanting to be a part of the first USA Memory Championship. And of course, there was a curiosity of what were we doing? What was this thing going to look like? Who were these people? What is this competition? In the early stages of this, we announced it as the USA Memoriad, and the problem that we had was people in reading about that were confused in some cases. When they heard Memoriad, they thought it was some kind of a memorial service for people. So we eventually changed it to the USA Memory Championship, and then we trademarked and copyrighted that. But the first year was amazing. We had a very interesting situation developed. We had everybody seated. We had the first event ready to start, and a young woman by the name of Tatiana Cooley got herself into the room as we were about ready to say and let the competition begin. And she said, "I just heard about this on the radio. Would it be possible for me to still participate?" And so we quickly huddled with Tony and Vonda and Karen Pinson, who's been with it since its birth. And we huddled quickly and said, "You know what? We have a game. We have a seat. We can put her in it, and we can let her compete." And as it turns out, she became our very first USA Memory Championship winner. And she just had a way of going about doing things. So her deck of cards, the 5 minutes we give for deck of cards, she never did well at that, but she was our champion for the first 3 years before she was outed by Scott Hagwood from North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And so she was our champion for 3 years. It was on Diane Sawyer, it was in People magazine. But the thing that Tatiana did, and I always said to her, "Tatiana, you're missing a point here," which is when people would say, "Well, did you always have a good memory? Were you born with a good memory?" And this is now our first year, and we got our champion for the first 3 years into the world. I was born with a good memory, and which is one of the myths that we deal with, and we've dealt with it now for 26 years, is there are things you can learn, skills, systems, methods that you can learn to improve your memory at any age. And here was our 3-time champion getting on television, and of course the question was always come up, did you always have a good memory? And it was when she was interviewing for a People magazine article where I finally cracked the code in year 3, when she was sitting there being interviewed, and it came out in the conversation. I said, "Jesus, Tatiana, was there ever a time in your life where you were utilizing or applying some of the memory techniques that you apply in the competition?" He said, "Oh, well, you know what? When we were little girls and we'd take rides, my parents would always play these games with us in the car. And that taught me different ways of how I would remember the different things we were looking at in the scenery as we were driving by. It is a way to break up a car ride, different things that we would do to play memory games in our car when we were little girls. And I'm like, so you learned the way when you were a little girl on how to remember things as you were driving by in the scenery. It sounds like the loci method, Roman room, palace method, however you want to call it. It's a method of retaining information by looking at objects as you go by or walk by that you use as anchors in a system to remember things that you want to recall at a later point in time. It's been around for hundreds of years, and here was Tatiana as a little girl trying to beat her sister and mom and dad in memory activities as they were driving by scenery, taking long car rides. And I'm saying, so Tatiana, it wasn't a matter of you being born with all these natural gifts. It was as a little girl or as a girl growing up with your parents and taking long car rides, you'd play these games that taught you different memory techniques that just became innate to you. You just developed them as you went along to try to win these games as you drove along these roads and checking out scenery and anchoring things that you saw on signs or buildings or streets that helped you remember. And we do call that the Roman room, loci method. It's a way of locating information in your brain that becomes an anchor that you then can store information to it. And so there was our first, second, and third year winner. Diane Sawyer was in People magazine telling the world, hey, I was born with this natural memory, which is like, what we really want to do is share with people you can learn memory skills at any age. And then in our fourth year, a gentleman that had been fighting and battling with cancer entered the competition, and when he won and was asked the question, he said, well, I read a book by Tony Buzan on Use Your Perfect Memory, and as I was going through my chemo treatments, I would practice these techniques, and he decided to give this a go in the memory competition. He was challenged by his brother, and he had a terrific wife that supported him in this, and obviously battling cancer is not the easiest thing in the world. And so Scott Hagwood came in year 4, and he beat Tatiana in the championship, and Scott actually won 4 years in a row. So within our first 7 years, we had Tatiana Cooley and Scott Hagwood being our USA Memory champions. Well, we've now gone into year 26, and we've certainly had a number of very prominent winners. I always think of the International Man of Memory. Chester Santos came from the technology areas of California and tried several years before he finally won the championship, and then began to travel about the world and sharing with people. He's been to palaces and with kings and queens and teaching people across the world how to improve their memory. And he was a marketing genius. He knew how to take the messaging and get it out. Probably the best thing that's ever occurred to us was Moonwalking with Einstein. Josh Four, writing in his early days, before he's become so popular and famous, but part of the Four family out of Washington, D.C., Josh comes along and just barely wins the competition. Well, he actually came the year before to report it for Slate magazine and was being critical of some of the nerds or the mental athletes. And so he was challenged by them to come back and see, well, if you think this is so great, and you come back and try and see how good you can do. And he was smart enough to go out and learn what the skills are, practice those skills, 20 minutes, 3 times a week, came into the competition just barely in the final round, saved himself by one person and wound up winning the event. And then he writes the book Moonwalking with Einstein, which has been our best and most popular book that people still read, that have gotten more people to enter the competition than any PR or anything else we've done. So I've always been appreciative of Josh and the fact that he wrote this book that has become a bestseller for people wanting to learn something about their memory. And of course, Moonwalking with Einstein was a technique he used in one of the events to help him get through it. So it's been a great 26 years as we get prepared for our July 12th event here in online, which we now do as opposed to being in person for the qualifying events. And then we take the 12 people and bring them to the stage at Full Sail University in August. And we'll be putting 12 people on the stage to compete for who's got the best memory in our 26th year. So we're in that stage, so check out our website, USA Memory Championship. We're still open for applications and people that may want to compete and just have some fun and test their memories against other people and just use it as a benchmark and just start out as a base and see how you get to improve over a period of time and prove to yourself that you too can improve your memory regardless at any age. So check us out, and hopefully we'll see you sometime in the 26th year of the USA Memory Championship.